Hey, GrowWire listeners, on today's episode, we've got Dan Granger. Dan's the CEO and founder of Oxford Road. Oxford Road's a performance marketing agency that helps companies grow by leveraging offline media. Not online media, but offline media. So things like podcast, radio, and TV advertising. He's one of the big pioneers in this space. You may not know his company's name, but you've probably heard ads on a podcast or radio with brands like Ring, or Lending Tree, or Boll & Branch. He makes companies grow a lot faster by leveraging this area that is really becoming one of the fastest parts of the media buying landscape. Dan's been a long-time exec in the radio business, was at Clear Channel, and he talks a lot about what it takes to start a business, the importance of some of the relationships he's had, and how he has leveraged that to become one of the leaders and pioneers in this new area of podcast and radio advertising. So I think you're really going to like Dan's story of entrepreneurialism, but also how he sees this area playing out in the future and how it might even help your own business as you try and grow your own brand and sales.
You're listening to the GrowWire Podcast, a place where you'll learn the ins and outs of growing a business, running a business, or even taking your big idea, career, or personal development to the next level. It's all possible. Our host, Jason Maynard, the SVP of Marketing at Oracle NetSuite and the Editor-in-Chief of GrowWire.com, will take you on an exploration of growth through candid conversations with some of the most brilliant minds in entrepreneurship, entertainment, business development, and more. Whatever your goal, we know you'll walk away with the right tools to help fuel your own journey of growth.
All right, before we get into our conversation with Dan Granger, here's a word from our sponsor over at Second City. Second City, you've probably heard of these guys. They turn out a lot of great comedians, but they also have a part of their business for corporate entertainment. Now, corporate entertainment doesn't have to be an oxymoron. Now, admittedly, there are some executives and CEOs in this business who are pretty funny, maybe not intentionally, but Second City Works is the B2B side of the comedy mecca. They help build events that are interactive, educational, and totally hilarious. Whether you're going to plan a leadership summit, a sales meeting, an association conference, or you just need to make your team laugh, the top-tier comedy pros of Second City Works bring your information to life and will make your audience laugh till they learn. Laugh till you learn. Visit secondcityworks.com to find out more how they can make your business grow. I also want to make sure you guys check out the website at GrowWire.com, GrowWire.com. We got a lot of great articles. We keep putting up new stuff every day and week over there. One of the pieces this week that I think you ought to check out is the psychology behind those subscription box services. All sorts of interesting innovations in these direct-to-consumer businesses. What makes you want them? What makes them a great business model? It also might be interesting if you're looking at how do you go direct to the consumer. Maybe you want to try something like this from a subscription standpoint. So that's the type of stuff we put on GrowWire.com. We got a lot of good stuff on how you grow your business, new business strategy ideas, and this new one around subscription services I think you'll find quite interesting. So check it out. All right, welcome to the GrowWire Podcast. It's Jason Maynard, and in the studio today, the CEO of Oxford Road, Dan Granger. Dan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you in here. So, Dan is a burgeoning media mogul. Can I call you that?
That's fair. I'll
That's
take
fair
it.
enough. You'll take it, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it about myself, but I'll receive that.
Dan is founded and is CEO of a company called Oxford Road. I would say one of the pioneers in driving the shift of ad dollars, if you will, from digital, maybe back to offline. And we're going to talk a little bit about the growth in performance marketing and advertising and radio and podcasting and how you've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. Mm-hmm. Some good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So, but before we get into that, I want to have folks learn a little bit about how you got here with Oxford Road. So, you know, what was your entree into getting into this business?
Well, I think being pushy is probably the first thing. If you're going to be a seller of media services in the effort to sell other people's products, you know, you have to I think be somewhat assertive. And you know, my background is I grew up in Michigan in a suburb outside of Detroit. And during the time that I lived there until about, I guess it was about 17 years ago, that was a city in decline, and everything around it was moving backwards. There's quite a renaissance happening now, as you probably heard, but in the midst of that, I think I was able to be surrounded by a number of people that refused to be defined by their external circumstances. And I tried to take a lot of that in. And so for me, Oxford Road is the name of the street where I grew up on, but it's a metaphor for where I grew up, because that was where I grew. That was where I got to test different things. I personally, I walked a line between being a troublemaker as a kid in an extreme way and also a high achiever as a kid. And I got to do things on the achiever side that in certain respects I get to do today. I was president of my class in high school from 10th to 12th grade. I got to write a column for our school newspaper and executive edit it. I got to do a lot of really interesting things that helped prepare me for the types of things I'm doing as an entrepreneur and in the marketplace and in marketing. But one of the things that really influenced me was when I was a junior in high school, I was part of a group called Presidential Classroom. They got to go to D.C. and they took you to the White House. They let you sit on the floor of Congress. And there was a CNN correspondent who was giving us a talk. And then they let us ask questions. And the correspondent was talking about having covered the Oklahoma City bombing. And my question was this. I said, do you ever do anything beyond just reporting on what happened? Do you ever do anything to influence the circumstances and help the people that have been impacted? And the reporter got very, very defensive and was kind of like, almost how dare you ask me that? Really? I do a good job. I'm a good person. And, and I was like, wow, I really don't want to go into media because I don't want to just simply entertain. I want to influence. And so for me, my goals have never really been about just being heard or getting an idea into the marketplace. It's about getting somebody to make a decision that's going to positively impact people in a way that they wouldn't have if we hadn't put our energy into it. And that's really what advertising is if it's done properly. It's advocating for something that you believe in and doing something that you would ask somebody that you know and care about to do and to take an action, and then trying to convince millions of people that you don't know to do the same thing. And so that's what we get to do today, and I think that's all just kind of part of who I am and how I grew up in the world.
How did you end up out here in California?
I wanted to hit reset and get a fresh start around the time I was about 18 or 19. And if you're going to leave Michigan, why not go to California? So I came out here and went to school, transferred out here. I was at U of M Dearborn, and I came to a small college here in Orange County, and met my wife there, and part of the deal was she wasn't going to move to Michigan. And so I was a Californian ever since.
Did you know anybody in California?
I knew nobody. I mean, I might have had one or two friends that were in different parts of Southern California.
So
You
just packed up the car and just hit the road?
Basically, yeah. I mean, didn't bring a lot with me, but came out and, I was in school, and so I got to, build a foundation there. But I met my wife, who is now my wife, 30 days after I got there.
Oh, wow.
I met my best friend my first night in my dorm room, and who I, and still actually is part of Oxford Road today. Our paths have kind of zigged and zagged along the way, and now he's actually been able to partner with me in the work that we're doing. So I think I established roots pretty quickly when I got here, and it's been a good thing.
No looking back then.
No looking back.
So after college, you went to work for Clear Channel. How did you actually break into that business?
I have this history nerd side of me, and you come to LA and somehow you end up getting bit by the entertainment bug to some extent, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I really didn't want to get into pure journalism, but I wanted to be involved in something that was centered around content that I thought was valuable. And I got a job working for a company called Greystone Television doing History Channel documentaries. But what that really meant for me was I was running tapes around town and negotiating license agreements, and it was horrible. That's the business starting out, right? But I found myself stuck in LA traffic and really getting interested in all the debate that I would listen to on the radio, on some of the talk formats, and I was really engaged with that. And I remember pulling up to a set one time, and I didn't want to get out of the car because I wanted to keep listening to the argument that was happening on the radio. I'm like, I'm in the wrong business. So I thought, okay, my entry point into that industry was probably going to be through advertising sales. And I went to find, I said, who are the top people that do this type of thing? And I called a few people. I said, I found somebody that was a local sales manager. I said, I just want to come and pick your brain about what you do. How does your life work? What is this business? If you wouldn't mind teaching me. There's a man who was very generous with that. And then he referred me over to what was at the time and may still be the largest talk radio station in America, which is KFI 640. And I think they took about 90 days just blowing me off and rescheduling interviews with me, but I think they wanted to test my tenacity to keep showing up, which I did, and they'd give me projects, and I'd do the projects. I just kept jumping through the hoops, and they're like, all right, he's not going to let up, so they gave me a job, and they give you a
That's
desk
how it
and
always
a phone
happens.
and at the time, the yellow pages, and it's like, okay, have at it. And but it worked out, and I thought it was so fun that when I got there, they were like, I found out that you got to write the ads if you sold them. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever, imagined.
I didn't even know that. So really?
Yeah. Most of the time, some of them have copywriters, but if you're the account executive, you are the agency for the small business, effectively.
So what do you remember the first company you sold in the ad?
Yes, I do.
Oh, we got to hear that.
Oh, well.
Or can you not?
No, it's fine. I'll tell the story now. I'm going to try not to name any names, but I talked to somebody who had actually called into the station, so it wasn't like it came off of a cold call, although I did a lot of those. But there was a person who had a concept for education that they told me was going to be revolutionary, and it was going to be the new hooked on phonics, and this thing was going to change the world, and they needed to start an ad campaign, and they need to do it right away. And I thought, okay, what's the best way to start them? And it was, I'm a believer that one of the best tactics in radio is to advertise in fringe day parts where you can buy high frequency at a low cost. So we agreed that we were going to launch the campaign on a Sunday, but the problem was it was Easter Sunday. And I called her and I said, look, I know we're scheduled to go here and you want to go fast, but this is Easter Sunday. I don't think this is the time we should be launching your campaign. I think you need to wait. And she said, no, we got to go. We got to do this. And I met her at a Denny's, and she handed me a bag of cash, literally a bag of cash with singles and fives and 20. It was insane. It was insane.
Small business.
It was
I take
small
it.
business. Yeah. I didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Right? I thought it was Oracle to me.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
So anyway. I did my best, and I remember talking to somebody going, I feel really badly because if this person isn't successful, I feel like I'm going to ruin their business. And they said, somebody gave me some really good advice, said, look, have you done your part to advise and consult that this is not actually your recommendation before you carry this out? And I said, yeah, I said, I really think we should approach this differently. And he said, well, then you've done your part. And now it's their money, it's their job to make the final decision, right? And it was a good lesson for me that I still hold with me today. We have to be assertive and consultative in telling a client, this is what we believe you need to do. But at the end of the day, it is their money. Yeah. And so as long as we're clear, those are the rules. So bottom line, it's Easter Sunday, and the ads start going off. And when they all ended, I called her up and I said, so how'd we do? And she said, well, you're gonna get to run again next week, right? And I said, yeah, that's in the contract. And she said, okay, but I don't have any more money. And I said, well, I can't run ads if you don't have money. And she said, what? You mean you're not just gonna keep going? And then she goes, my mom is gonna kill me. And that was basically the end of that campaign. So that was a wonderful disaster for everybody involved. But I learned a lot. I hope that she learned a lot. And it's still Comes down to managing expectations, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh!
No matter what we're doing. So
you were in the radio business here at the kind of at the, I don't know if you call it the peak, but this was what, in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
right?
I started in 2003, and that was just post the deregulation that they did. I don't know if you remember, but I think it was Clinton signed something into law where they allowed consolidation in a way that never happened before. And so all of the radio station owners started swallowing each other. And you had these really big holding companies that the radio industry had never seen. That's when Clear Channel ended up on top.
Yeah.
So I ended up at the top talk radio station and the top owner of radio stations and that the world had ever seen. It was a really interesting time to be there, but at the same time it was around the advent. I started when the hangover was still in from the .com explosion. Yeah. When we wouldn't let a .com have credit terms because they thought, well, they tried that, it's over, you know. Yeah. So it was a very interesting time to get in.
So if you go back to that time, what was going on there with like satellite radio vis-a-vis terrestrial, and you were starting to see the music industry change a bit, right? Yeah. With obviously with there was illegal downloading, and then there was legal downloading, and streaming was always sort of off, kind of in the future. But how did it look from the inside?
Well, it took me about 3 or 4 years to see the tide starting to turn, and when it did, I made a lot of noise because I saw Pandora happening, and it was on the fringes. Whether or not it's taken any meaningful share from the traditional players, I can't tell you. At the time, it was just an idea that seemed disruptive. And podcasts were, the last thing they were was a threat, at least based on the volume that they were doing. There was nothing happening that looked anything like an industry to be concerned with. But what I saw then was it afforded a renaissance in programming that hadn't really happened before. So, for example, what you're doing with GrowWire, it's a great concept, but you wouldn't have had a platform for national distribution of this previously.
Correct.
And every radio station in America, which was the distribution point for this type of content, had to be live programming, and somebody somewhere, some program director, had to convince an owner that it was going to make it into the top 20 stations in a market, and if it's too niche, you can't get there. Mm-hmm. And so that meant that there were all of these people with these interest based, whether it's comedy, whether it's business, the most niche that you got in a radio station was like sports, right? And that was like a specialty topic. But other than that, you really couldn't serve these audiences. And so what I saw happening was, I'm like, advertisers need a way to pair with audiences that are more like their customer base. Consumers really need to find tribes that are like them, which the internet started making possible, but nobody was really doing with audio yet in a way that there was distribution. So when podcasts started happening, they gave me a couple awards and flew me to New York, where I got to be at a party with the CEO and the CFO at the time. And I wrote up this presentation called Talk Radio 2.0. And I said, guys, this is the future. We need to get in. We need to be early adopters in this, and I basically ambushed them. There's a picture of me, like, I had no business speaking to them at the party. I wasn't at a table with them, but when they came in, I beelined it and pitched them a proposal. And they were kind of like, yeah, that's cute. Go talk to this guy over here. He's like, oh, that's cute, but we'll get back to you. They're like, oh, we're doing all that. They weren't doing any of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do understand that the size that they were, it wasn't an interesting opportunity then, and they would start paying attention when it would become one. But I saw an opportunity, and from the ground level, and just knowing what real people running a business, trying to grow that business and using advertising to do it, I knew there was going to be an opportunity there. So I started paying attention, and I started dabbling in different ways of reaching into those types of audiences as they were emerging. And that's really what gave way to what became Oxford Road, was experiments when its time had finally come and it was something you could monetize in a meaningful way and get some amount of scale for.
We're going to take a quick break and learn a little bit more about actually when you founded Oxford
If you've ever met a famous athlete at a corporate event or gotten an official autograph, chances are Steiner Sports made it happen. Here's Brandon Steiner.
We believe that there's magic in the moments that sports creates. We get customers closer to the game and help companies use the power of sports to grow their business. We've been in business 30 years, and we've had multiple systems to keep track of all the athletes and all of our customers. Multiple systems means multiple headaches. So we made the move to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite lets us replace all of our finance, inventory, and CRM functions with one convenient system. Now all the departments can see the same data. And if I have a question about our business, I can get the answer quickly.
Find out how Steiner Sports scaled their business to millions of customers. Go to netsuite.com/Steiner. You'll also get our free guide titled Overcoming Your 5 Obstacles to Growth. That's netsuite.com/Steiner for our free guide and the story of a great American company.
All right, so it's 2013. You've been through that period where you're incubating the idea, you're pitching it to the corporate overlords who are not that interested, or So what made you start the business?
Well, so let me say this: Clear Channel was always very good to me on a local level. They let me run my operation like a business, and they supported me and let me try a lot of my crazy ideas, which I really appreciate. I think at the most senior level at that time, they just had their priorities elsewhere.
That's often the case, though. It was probably too small to like you said, to move the revenue needle for them.
And I think since they brought in Bob Pittman, he's been a lot more progressive and taken the industry in ways that I think are more compatible with where things are going than what it was dealing with at the time. So all that is to say, they were very good to me. But what ended up happening was, so I'm at my desk one night, and Adam Carolla is at the studio on the Petros and Money show, like 20 feet away from me, from my desk, and I knew he was in there to promote his podcast, right? And he was just starting to get some advertisers, but I had heard that some of those advertisers were getting a response.
He was one of the first kind of names to really.
Yeah, that was a big deal when he went over there. I mean, you got to think when Adam Carolla, they turned off all of his affiliates. He got part of the Howard Stern empire when Stern went to satellite, right? And Stern brought a lot of the terrestrial audience over to satellite. Well, Carolla did a lot of that for radio, as did Leo Laporte, in having a legitimate follower base that would actually go with them to a new platform. So those guys were both very early in and made a meaningful impact. And I knew Leo from radio, and I had this freak occurrence where Carolla was down the hall from me. So I thought, well, I'll wait him out. And when he got out of the studio, I started walking with him. I said, Adam, I have advertisers who buy endorsements on the radio. I think some of them might benefit from advertising on your podcast. Do you mind if we work something out so I refer some people to your show? And I didn't want to have an agency on the side, so I did this above board and got referral fees. I started getting podcasters to give me referral fees for giving them advertisers.
Oh, man.
And he was like, yeah, sure, talk to this person. And so I started. And around the same time, I was really focused, and my team was focused within Clear Channel. I had built sort of a mini agency within the company that I was paying out of my commissions to be able to expand what I was doing as an account executive. And we were really focused on Silicon Valley companies because at the time, Silicon Valley didn't believe in offline advertising. They didn't understand it, and nobody spoke their language to be able to bridge the gap. And that was something that we really became adept at doing. And so it was around that time, for example, that we were talking to Michael Dubin, who had just launched Dollar Shave Club. He just had the video drop.
Oh, wow.
And he's over at Science with 3 or 4 people, something like that. And we had a meeting with him, and he's like, I got 10 grand, and I had a podcast plan and I had a radio plan, and he's like, I can only do one of them. And I'm like, man, my job is radio, but I also know that Adam Carolla will destroy it for him, and he's got to do it for his business. So I said, you got to do Carolla. So that was his first offline move.
No way.
Yeah. Other than his, sensational viral video to launch the company. I don't want to, but that was the first chess piece in their offline marketing game. And it was amazing to get to be a part of that. But it also showed me, because it worked so well and the retention was so much better, the growth was so much better, in probably 90 days from when I started just tinkering, the volume of business we had accrued was as much as I had been able to grow from 10 years of working in radio, just one at a time. So this business that I was just kind of doing on the side really took off in a big way, to the point where I was like, well, okay, the market's talking to me. I need to listen. And, I've got this idea and that idea, but why don't I just follow what the market is telling me? And I went to my, the people that ran our division of what is now iHeart, what I think then was still Clear Channel. I said, look, guys, I love you. These are your clients, not mine. But I need to go. And if you'd be willing to I was trying to avoid having some sort of like Jerry Maguire moment, right? And I said, but I think we can all do better if you work with me and let me take the radio clients with me as I start this new agency. And I got to tell you, they said yes, and they were effectively partners to me in helping me launch Oxford Road.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah, they because they knew we'd all win in the long run. We trusted each other, right? And so I got to hit the ground running with a full book of business in terrestrial radio, plus the podcast business we had put together, and we just started growing like crazy. I mean, it was an unbelievable way to start.
That is a fortuitous way to start a business.
Yeah, it is.
But it's your relationship.
You pay for it, right? Well, it's a relationship, and also, there's a cost. You do pay for it, and the cost was I was working 3 jobs, right? I had my job.
Yeah.
I had the new business, and then I had the job of starting a company, which is its own business.
Yeah.
Right? It is so it was like I look back to 5 years ago when we launched, and I think about the summer of 2013, and I think about, like, I'm in a room, I'm working constantly, and I didn't see my family. They're out there, I'm in here, and I bump into them once in a while. Yep. It is like there was no sleep, there was no vacation, there was no nothing. It was all the time working 3 jobs, and the people that came with me, it's amazing. Of our first 10 people, we still have 5 of them today, which in this marketplace is pretty cool, right? But we had some really committed people that were on board that helped make this possible.
So when you saw this shift going on, how did you pitch the ROI to the advertiser? Whether it's a Carolla podcast or some of the other podcasts, how did obviously the example with Dollar Shave Club, you said you knew this was going to. I
knew.
Like, how did you figure this out?
Okay, so I have a very simple, but contrarian approach to this type of media planning. I think that the marketing, everything they teach you about marketing is that you got to find the right audience for your target customer, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that targeting is a good filtering mechanism, and it's probably true on mail, it's definitely true on digital. The things that you can do with targeting today are out of this world. But when it comes to getting somebody to tell your story to the masses, really using a big microphone or television or something like that, you're only going to get so targeted. And we can talk about addressable and everything like that. We can talk about where it's going, and happy to go there. But at the end of the day, what nobody publishes, they'll publish ratings. You'll know what you're paying for an impression on most of these channels. But what you don't know is what that impression is actually worth to you. And what I have found is if you know what it did for another advertiser who's a little bit like you, you will know what it's going to do for you. That I can show you 2 media buys on paper that are identical and identically priced, and yet one of them is going to pull 5 times better than the other. So what I look for is track record. I look for what other companies has this platform or vehicle been successful for, and it's an if-then, which gets us a lot further than is it a good fit, and trying to follow what is probably most intuitive. And so from that I was able to see, well, he did it for this one, and this one, and we started running experiments and they all started working. So that was an easy way to get in. and then just trying to be really conservative on the tests. And certain advertisers get to a place where they have budget to experiment, and then they become the leader in identifying what the new opportunities are and shouldering more of the risk as you scale, because you have to, right? Interestingly, one of our first clients was Hulu, who actually signed us as their agency of record before we were actually an agency, which was pretty cool, right? But they got very big, very fast, and we got to not only run core shows that other people had proven, but also do a lot of experimentation too, and that's what happens when you're a leader, is you end up kind of creating the beaten path for the other advertisers to follow.
So when you look back at starting this business now, what, 5 years, right? What were
this week?
It's
our anniversary.
It's your anniversary.
Yeah.
So what did you get right?
I was right about the podcast thing. If I've ever been right about anything, I'd say that was that was a good call. Yeah. One of the founders of LegalZoom, Eddie Hartman, said to me at a breakfast before I launched the agency, I said, give me some advice. He said, well, if a man wants to open a fish market, step one is to steal 2 fish. And, lest it be interpreted as something devious, I think the idea is, before you do, if you build it, they will come. Go and get the marketplace to show interest before you go and start creating infrastructure around something, and let the market talk to you. And I think we did that at the beginning. We let the marketplace drive our business's creation and growth, rather than having an idea and chasing the idea and finding out later if the market even really wanted that idea, right?
Well, you saw it firsthand, right? You
saw firsthand. Yeah. I knew that they needed it. All companies need growth or want growth, and all of them need to know that their ads are helping them grow, right? And if you can find a new way to do that, everybody's interested.
Yeah. What'd you screw up?
How much time you got? Are we at 40? You want to do a bonus episode?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think one of the big screw-ups was, I'd say about halfway between starting and now, pulling away from that model, where we started, the growth was so meteoric. I had one quarter where we grew 284% in 90 days. And trying to deal with that, and starting to say, okay, well, we know we're obviously going to keep growing out of control forever. We have to get really efficient at hiring and building infrastructure. And we started kind of building an outfield, and it was at that time that we went into a season where everybody started to bunt. Right, and the your expenses don't care, and your team doesn't. That's not their. They don't just vanish when the business.
Fixed costs are fixed costs, right? Fixed costs
are fixed costs, right? Yeah. And so I think part of that was we had the right intentions. I didn't like seeing the hours that people were putting in. I didn't feel that was sustainable. I didn't like seeing the difficulty it puts on people when they're working, more than is reasonable. But at the same time, there's a real balance, right, in that you actually can put people in jeopardy if you expose them to more risk by raising overhead. And so I think that, that was something I am still learning, but I think I've learned a lot about. I also think that when you're working adjacent to tech and to e-commerce businesses that are VC funded, you start absorbing some of the ethos and drinking some of the Kool-Aid, which is good Kool-Aid if you're in that business. But I am not in that business. I built this thing out of my trunk, right? And so if you think that it's all about top-line revenue, and you start, swinging for the fences and trying to build, your own technology so that you can continue to innovate and things like that, and you try to do it the way that they do it, it doesn't really work.
Sometimes easier with other people's money, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the concept of OPM.
Right. Well, yes, yeah, and it's not to say that that's good or bad. It's just, I think, not playing my position, but trying to play more of the position. And what I think my clients really want is, I think they want us to be a really good agency, and they don't really want they don't really care how much we're like them or not like them as much as they care that we're good at the work they go to us to do because we're not like them and they don't know how to do what we do. And so that's, I think, one of the things that can be a distraction. And I think just sometimes trying to square reality with my own ambitions, that's always a struggle, because I don't want anybody to ever accuse me of not aiming high enough. And yet, if you aim too high, there can be real fallout from missing those targets, and what it puts people through to aim so high.
Yeah.
And so finding that balance, so much of this is balance. So much of this is just living with the paradox of life in business, where you have to balance contradictory truths at the same time, right? It's like it's just business, but business is personal. It's like, how do you, learning to reconcile these things.
But man, finding the balance between top line growth and maintaining a margin or generating a profit, is probably one of the most difficult things. And then, if you're fortunate enough to get to that stage, right? Mm-hmm. So, this is sort of, the rich person's problem is getting there, like where you build a successful business.
Yeah.
But trying to find that toggle, right, and place your bets appropriately might be one of the hardest jobs anybody can really do, because it's finite resources, and you bet wrong, you're in trouble, right? How fast do you grow? Do you increase the fixed cost before the revenue stream comes? And it's a tricky thing
It's a tricky thing.
Yeah. What would be the piece of advice that you'd share with somebody who's going through that right now? Maybe they got a successful business and they're, they've grown. They're venture backed or not venture backed.
Well, I think it depends. Where your bread is buttered, right? Because I would probably advocate for more cautious optimism if you are self-funded. If you are venture backed, then you're engaging in a system that is designed to facilitate only explosive growth, right? The people that are giving you money are trading on the notion that you're going to be a blockbuster. They're not looking for a profitable business. They're looking for a blockbuster. Yeah. And so you have to play that game, right?
Yeah.
If you're not that, then you got to play your position. You got to know that's not your position.
Yeah.
And I think that getting that right is really important. I would also say, you get a lot of feedback, and it's as important that you listen to other voices. I love getting advice from other people. I have a lot of mentors, a lot of smart people that have poured into me, and I listen. I want to listen to everybody on my team and what they have to say, regardless of position, right? But you got to be careful, no matter who they are or what they've done, not to listen too much, because you're not as smart as they're telling you when you're winning. You're not as dumb as they're telling you when you're losing, or as they're telling somebody else who's telling you that they told them, right? And I think that grounding yourself in reality and having people that can encourage you when you're down and build and humble you when you're up is really, really important, because everybody's going to play to your momentum, and it gives you a false sense of reality, and you don't want to give in to either side of those at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Right?
It's good advice. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk a little bit about the future of marketing. I want to thank our sponsor, Hint. If you don't know about Hint yet, their brand is all about making every day more enjoyable. It started when Kara Golden, Hint's founder, who needed a way to drink more water, but wanted flavor without the sugar and sweeteners that come in most drinks. All the stuff that supposedly will make you healthy, but actually has lots of sugar and does the total opposite. So she created Hint Water, and I have to tell you, this is one of my go-to drinks every day. I like the peach flavor. That's my favorite Hint Water, so you got to check that out. So Hint is just a flavor from real fruit essences. It doesn't have any sugar or sweeteners, and so it's really good. It's like water, but you don't have to drink a Coke or any of that soda. Good stuff for you. But instead of me telling you why it's so great, why don't you try it yourself? Head over to hint.co/welcome to get 30% off your first purchase right now. Go ahead and buy a box. Try it. It's great. So this is one of those areas around the future of marketing that I'm kind of fascinated with, because if you listen to Silicon Valley or tech, you'd think every dollar, right, is going from traditional media to online media overnight. And you look at the size of the Google ad business, and you look at the Facebook ad business, and I mean, they're clearly massive franchises, right? And it's happening. But your agency is a little bit of a contrarian play, although podcasting, you could argue,
you could almost call it digital.
You can almost call it digital, right? But what I like about what you guys talk about, I think this is what's so interesting to anybody trying to grow a brand, is this notion of performance marketing. And so, how do you see this whole landscape playing out?
Yeah. I'll break it down for you. And it's something I had to think hard about when starting the agency. I almost called it the podcast agency.
Oh, interesting.
And Scott McDonald, who has been a client, a friend, and for a season
of LegalZoom fame.
Of LegalZoom fame, Yes. So he talked me out of it, and I think it was the right thing. We've been intentional from the beginning to say we're not here to tie our identity to a platform.
Yeah.
Because platforms change, and there was the stage, there was vaudeville, there was radio, there was TV, right? And there was stuff that people wanted to listen to other people doing live. They wanted to do it by appointment at a time to hear something that was going to have a shelf life and be very interesting if you caught it live. And then we had records, and then we had VHS tapes, right? And we wanted to watch things at our convenience, at our leisure. And movie rentals, right? As some people might recall, right? I don't think a lot has changed in terms of what people want and how they engage with it in terms of what it is. Now, what has changed and what continues to change with increasing rapidity is the delivery vehicles and the options, the number of choices, right? But you're still, look, there's terrestrial radio, satellite radio, and there's streaming radio, right? There's VOD, there's podcast, there's Netflix, there's on demand, right? It doesn't matter to me if the content is still half terrestrial, half streaming. The majority is probably still in the traditional distribution platforms right now, but it is shifting, and we've been seeing the shift the whole time. And our job is just to make sure that our clients are straddling the line so that we're not caught flat-footed too far on one side or the other. We are in a very interesting period as that's starting to change, and I think we're going to at some point stop talking about terrestrial radio. We'll probably just be talking about radio, but the way that it's served to you is as a stream, and you'll be less limited in how many distribution. You'll be less limited in how many distribution points can serve it to you. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Well, I think the question is, do you see offline and online working together? Maybe ask you that. Is that a trend that you start to see
that's
happen?
what I'm saying is yes, I do, but I don't see them as. I only see them as distinct in this moment in time.
Got it.
I think that they're going to be
you think
online.
It's all blended.
It's blending right now. Like if you're a big brand, like we get to see the life cycles where somebody goes from startup to IPO, billions of dollars in valuation. Let me tell you, they're doing everything, right? They're doing mail, they're doing terrestrial radio, they're doing satellite radio, they're doing podcasts, they're doing. But the truth is, there's not that much scale yet to be had in some of the emerging platforms. If you're a new business, there's plenty. If you're a business that's already at scale, it's only a side dish for you right now. Now that's growing, and our agency is very focused on being able to remain competitive in streaming, podcast, OTT, VOD, these channels that are emerging. But that will be everything at some point. And your brand. Now, when we started in podcast, it was a really great fit for us because we were so focused on innovative companies, because it was a way to target customers that had self-selected as early adopters for an early adopter product. If you had something you were doing for the first time and changing a business model, what a great place to catch them, right? And you could buy it for a song with a very low barrier to entry in its cost structure. But at the end of the day, people need to sell products, and if your business is going to really get big, you need to sell it to people regardless of where they are on the technology curve. And you're going to be limited if you can only sell on digital platforms or only sell on terrestrial. If you're doing, there's something that you sell exclusively to millennials and you're probably going to be all digital. There's something you're going to sell to senior citizens. You're still going to do, punch the phone number into your jitterbug and, find them that way. But for everybody else, it's a both and scenario. Yeah. But it will continue to shift, and we're committed to being at the forefront of that shift as it happens, while still keeping a toe in the past as long as it's valuable to our clients.
Yeah. You've worked with some of the, you talked about Dollar Shave Club, and you've worked with some of the other, fastest growing brands over the years.
Yeah.
When they made these forays into whether it was advertising on terrestrial or satellite radio or podcasting, were they doing this to generate brand awareness, or were they tying this to more of a direct response, almost like, if you kind of go back into the sort of the direct response ads on television type of mode, where that's a call to action and somebody's going to call someone or go to a website and buy a product? What was the motivation there?
I'm not sure today I know anybody who really just wants brand awareness for brand awareness' sake, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're trying to get customers. Now, the difference is time horizon. And some brands that are 100 years old are actually thinking about what the next generation is going to be buying. So they want sales, and they want to measure those sales, but they've got a lot more patience in how they go about getting them.
Fair enough, yeah.
But the reality is that a brand new business that's just starting out doesn't have that luxury of time horizon. They have to show that growth now. And so what we call direct response, I try not to use that term because it implies that there's going to truly be a return on ad spend that's acceptable, like within a 5-minute window of it happening, right? But we call it performance because we want to make sure that people are achieving their ROI objectives, whatever the KPI is. If it's a cost per acquisition, if it's a return on ad spend, whatever the technical KPI is. We want to believe that everything we're doing can be tied back to that type of a metric. And that's what's been, I think that's why we've resonated with this type of company, because they've really been about precise measurement of a marketing spend and its direct impact on sales. But the time horizon does change, and even as we see clients going through this growth cycle, their time horizons start to change. They get more concerned about, what do people think about us after they see the ad or hear the ad, in addition to, did I feed the monkey and hit my ROI numbers.
It does seem fascinating though to me, because and maybe it's just the podcast I listen to, but it does feel like the medium is looking a bit like the direct response from some of the, whether you go back to the old Guthy Ranker commercials.
Because they have calls to action on them.
They have calls to action,
You can tell, and they and very formulaic in many ways, and we have our own formula as well, and I think it's important. I mean, I can't tell you exactly what percentage of podcast dollars are what people might call direct response or performance dollars, but the typical way is, do they have a promo code or a vanity URL at the end of them, right? That's usually the mark of a performance marketer. And if you're not talking about like the NPR programming, that type of thing, then you're generally seeing the vast majority of the inventory going towards those, which is our world, right? That's what Oxford Road does. I actually think that's driven largely by the fact that they can't agree on a measurement system. So big brands won't buy it in the same way because they can't tell you how many impressions that they're getting, because they find out that targeting is kind of an illusion in this channel. And so you don't see a lot of Madison Avenue money coming in yet. Plus, it's all live reads, and they can't necessarily control what the host is going to say. I think that's perfect. I think that's magical, and I'll do it all day. But if you're Procter & Gamble, you might be more concerned about how your message is being represented in the marketplace. So it's actually an opportunity for me, and at some point that may actually diminish the opportunity for other performance marketers, because once they agree on a measurement standard, it's going to invite in all the brand dollars and it's going to drive up the prices. I don't like that.
Yeah.
So,
well, but you know what's fascinating on this one? The reason I asked this is that, and that's why I wanted to really get you to weigh in. So Dollar Shave Club obviously changed the business models in terms of going direct to a customer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And you've started to see, and obviously they were acquired for a boatload of money.
Yeah.
But you've started to see Gillette, right, start to advertise
Sure.
on podcasts now.
Yeah.
In a way that is talking about them effectively building a direct-to-consumer business.
Right.
So you take someone who spent millions and millions of ad dollars over the years, stadium naming rights, you name it, and now you're hearing them on podcasts. And so it's fascinating to me to see that change. I'm curious if is that the anomaly, or is that, do you think, speaks to a broader trend in the area?
That's a good question. Look, I'll tell you what I think a part of it probably is they know they're supposed to be there. They have to sit in meetings where somebody listens to a podcast and they go, why aren't we in that show, right? Why aren't we doing what they're doing? They're eating our lunch, So I think some of it is like you're seeing your parents try to be cool in a little bit of in some ways. I think there's a legitimate strategy behind it too, I'm sure, with many of them, where they're saying, well, why do we only have to be dependent on retail distribution? What if we can create our own distribution channels and build a more direct relationship with our customer base? I think that the value of an e-com brand that has its own direct line to customers is a very powerful thing, and so I'm sure they're recognizing that as well. But I don't know how they actually evaluate that.
The ROI.
I've seen some of the ways you see. Like, I was looking at a brand that we've all heard of, and I saw what their agency was pitching them on why they should do podcasts. It's like, you're never going to know if this is selling what you think that you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
So they're trying to feel it out and poke their way into it. But I really think that what's inevitably going to be the bigger factor is when they can go, oh, well, you're going to be able to buy this cost per point or whatever, and use those types of metrics that aren't necessarily directly correlated to sales. That's when the marketplace is really going to start to shift.
Do you think this medium is ripe for some smaller or even regional type of companies?
Not yet. Now, if we're talking podcasts, which is on-demand audio, then no.
Yeah.
Because as much as the reports will show you that it's burgeoning and it's X number of 30% of Americans listen to a podcast in the last month, but who knows what that actually means, right? You're getting a slice of the marketplace when you do this, and those of us that are in the business or junkies on this or live on the coast, we think this is what everybody does. They don't. They will, but they don't. And so you're getting a slice of a slice when you start to geo-target. There just isn't enough reach for it to be really significant for that type of filtering. Now, on the streaming side, which is different, I do think that there is an opportunity to do geo-targeted ads within a region and actually see some amount of meaningful value so that it's worth running as a standalone program. But again, that's a side dish. It's not the entree yet.
So a smaller regional company still better doing local cable or something along those lines.
If we're using podcasts as the comparison, then yes, absolutely. They're gonna be stuck there for a while. But the local TV owners and operators are picking up some steam, and they're gonna start figuring out some ways to make it more valuable for a local advertiser. I think we're probably a few years from where that becomes meaningful, though.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting trend. So you actually publish a newsletter called The Influencer.
I do indeed.
And folks should definitely check it out if you want to hear sort of like the musings on performance marketing and the evolution of marketing in general and all sorts of different places to go. Where can folks find that?
Well, it's always good to start at oxfordroad.com. And if you sign up for the Influencer, it started as just something I believed that we needed to do for our clients. But I think we're now reaching a broader representation of the marketplace for people that are. We have CEOs, CMOs, people in all walks of life. But if you're trying to grow your business with paid marketing efforts, hopefully there's something there for you. We've got deals that are time sensitive. We've got curated news that's relevant to keep you in the loop. But then we try to do a thought leadership piece on a weekly basis to get our view of the world and where it's going and how to operate in it, so that you can grow your business in a measurable way.
Yeah, I like it. Folks should check it out. It's good stuff in there. I actually look forward to getting that email because there's always something I learn.
Thank you.
We got time for one last question. Just sort of as you kind of think about you grew up in this business, started an agency, you've been through the ups and the downs. What are a couple just things you'd say, hey, this is what you should do. Don't make the mistakes I made, but learn from my lessons.
When I look at the people that I've worked alongside, and we see businesses flame out, it's a hazardous business to be in startup land, and we see companies that really, it's amazing. I get to see people that started as just a head of marketing and now they're CEOs of publicly traded companies. It's really, really cool to see how fast people can grow, right? But I think you have to look in the mirror and you have to be honest with yourself and say, is this really meaningful to customers what I'm doing compared to what everybody else is doing? And am I really willing to bleed for it? Am I willing to go all the way to make this thing work and keep at it? And I think because we're not in this for our health, we're not, you don't do, whether you're like my clients or whether you're like our agency, you don't do this for work-life balance. You do this because you've got something in you that needs to do it, and you have to be true to why you're doing what you're doing, right? And I see Oxford Road as it's just an extension of who I am. I don't know what else I would do that's wildly different than this because it's me. Yeah. And if you do that, you can deal with the brain damage because there's a lot of it, right? But you have to have the support of your family, or else it's going to be difficult. Yeah,
you talked earlier about the power of relationships as well, and I thought that was an interesting point that you made about those. That was one of your things that probably got you to where you're at today.
Well, relationships, there's got to be an exchange of value, right? Most of the time, there's got to be something that's helping everybody in a relationship out, and I think that relationships are why we do what we do. We're trying to add value to people, and we're in the service of people who service masses of people, right? Yeah. And it's interesting in our world today, loyalty and relationship are an increasingly precious asset. I worked for a company for 10 years. Which sounds today like a really long time.
It's a lifetime.
My dad was at a company for 40 years. I mean, can you imagine? And today, people will flip careers every 7 months. You get CMOs churning out every 18 months or less, right? And nobody holds it against you. It's just, It is the way of the world, right? But to really differentiate, it's about actually, you work with somebody, whether it's a client or whether it's somebody on your team, and you get to know what's wrong with them real fast, and they get to know what's wrong with you really fast. And then if you can persist through that and work in spite of the fact that we're just humans who have to manage each other's expectations, let each other down from time to time, and win together and lose together and go through the cycles, it's a really beautiful thing to not have to start over so much. Yeah. And so I take my childhood friendships very seriously. I take my family very seriously. I take my team very seriously. And I have so much pride in the fact that I have two people, Gary Brown and Miranda Romano, were with me at Clear Channel. They started in 2010, 2011, respectively. They have been through the battlefield with me and really had to not just enjoy the wins, but all of the really brutal losses, and to sustain through that is so precious. Yeah. And so when we can get that type of a relationship and partnership with a client, that's everything to me. And if I can spend the rest of my life, working with people that we have a mutual trust and understanding of each other and work through the challenges, that's a really beautiful thing.
I like that. That's good stuff. We'll end on that. And Dan, you'll have to come back and we'll talk some more about, what's going on in the world of marketing and all things in growing a business. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening to this episode of the GrowWire Podcast. I want to give a big thank you to Dan Granger from Oxford Road and how he's talking about the changes in the offline media business and how relationships help support what you're trying to do. I also want to give a big thanks to everyone who made this possible, all of our sponsors, including Second City, Steiner Sports, and of course, Hint, Drink It Up, as well as our producer, Kendall Fisher, and our editing crew over at Lampstand. Adios, everybody.
You just listened to the GrowWire Podcast with host Jason Maynard. Make sure to tune in every week for another episode full of tips, tools, and strategies to take your personal and professional growth to the next level. Until next time.